square, there were crowds of people saying that the theater should be burned. After the president's death, the people wanted to get rid of the theater. Lincoln and Johnson did not speak again until, of all days, mid-afternoon of April 14th. On April 15th, and the 3 hours hence until 10 a.m., about 12 hours all told, when the transfer of presidential was set to take place, and the chaotic, rough, and tumultuous days that followed in its uncertain wake. Indeed, throughout the evening of April 14th through the 15th, it was not Johnson, but the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, who from that small sitting room adjacent to the tailor's shop had assumed the reins of authority. It was only Alexander Hamilton who on June 18, 1787, first presented a plan for dealing with such a crisis. On the death, resignation, or removal of the governor, his authorities to be exercised by the President of the Senate till a successor be appointed. Here again, Forrest defied simple categorization. For all the South's robust support of slavery, most slave agents and small-time speculators were actually social pariahs and outcasts, much like drug dealers today and small-time bootleggers during Prohibition. It was one thing to profit from slavery or to own slaves. It was quite another for a well-born gentleman to buy and sell slaves for a living. But nothing quite so succeeds in American life, North or South, as success, and Forrest's immense wealth brought him respectably, and soon he was counted among Memphis, Tennessee's social elite. He was now welcome in the drawing rooms of the city's finest saloons, able to warm his feet by Marble Empire fireplaces, or stroll over imported French Aubusson rugs, or sign off on business etiquettes from a mahogany secretary. By 1858, he had been elected an alderman, but even as he rose in the ranks of Memphis's more refined social strata, Forrest remained in idiocracy. Neither fish nor fowl, where prominent Southerners were typically self-depreciating, he was a soft-spoken yet shameless master of self-promotion, where the newly rich sought to blend into the effete living of the polished upper class. Forrest continued to cuss and gamble, and where such in antebellum high society increasingly learned to settle differences amicably over the drawing table and aged brandy and good conversation, Forrest, who never drank, clung rigidly to the code duello, an elaborate code that brutally mixed honor with violence, and that gave rise to countless duels, feuds, settling of scores, and unswerving defense of one's name in the face of any effort, real or imagined. But it was in the war that Forrest most made his mark. In 1861, he enlisted as a private, then assembled and outfitted an entire cavalry battalion out of his own pocket. He began with no battle experience or formal training, but, by the war's end, he had become a lieutenant general, the only man in either army, and the only non-West Pointer to raise this far. He quickly emerged as the war's most dreaded cavalry commander, and the only non-West Pointer to raise this far. He quickly emerged as the war's most dreaded cavalry commander, known as much for his miraculous escapes as for his fierce exploits. 4 times he was wounded in battle, once taking a bullet that penetrated close to his hip and lodged precariously near his spine, and survived 29 times. He had horses shot out from under him, and 30 times he killed Federals in personal combat. Surely a record for this, or most likely any other American war. His temper was sharp, quick, and merciless. Once in 1863, a lieutenant in his command challenged Forrest to a fit in a pique, then drew his gun and fired. Struck at point-blank range, a reeling Forrest reached for his penknife with one hand, grasped his assailant with the other, and proceeded to unclasp his knife with his teeth and stab him. Convinced that his wound was fatal, Forrest shouted, "No damned man shall kill me and live." But it was this unlucky soldier who, stumbled across the street and later died. Forrest was back in the saddle 13 days later. "Burn the theater," roared the crowd. "Please calm down," the guards say. "Return to your homes. These Confederates killed our president. Shoot them, hang them again. Kill the goddamn rebels. Please go back home." The guards were now begging, just wanting them to go away. "We won't leave till Confederate blood rains on this town," one man screamed, causing the crowd to roar even louder. Out of all the treacherous and horrible things that happened during the Civil War, I thought it was funny how during all of the conflict they couldn't decide whether John Tyler should stay vice president or if he should become president. The problems lasted a number of weeks, and the conclusion went back and forth constantly. The man who challenged Nathan Bedford Forrest had terrible luck. He was hoping that he could kill Forrest, where in fact he should have known better. Forrest was very strong and does not give up without a fight. As he shot Forrest at point-blank range, Forrest got his penknife out and proceeded to stab the guy. The man later died, and Forrest was back in the saddle 13 days later. "No damn man shall kill me and live." This is a very important part of history. This little knife saved his life. When he was shot, he thought for sure that he was dead, so he attacked back at him with his penknife and stabbed the other guy a lot. The guy stumbled across the road and later died. But the best part of this was Forrest said, "No damned man shall kill me and live." Nathan Bedford Forrest deserves an award. His cavalry was the best and he was a good leader. Pre-war, his life was pretty normal for a Confederate. He was born into a poor Scotch-Irish-American family in Tennessee. His father and daughter died to scarlet fever, and then he became head of the family. Later, his uncle was killed, and in retaliation, he shot 2 of the people that killed his uncle. Then he became a businessman, planter, and slaveholder. At one time, he also became a slave trader. By 1861, he was one of the richest people in the South. After the war, he had a major setback because he was a slave trader, and the law on slavery passed. He also built a commissary in a town and found a job at a railroad. Eventually, he became the president of the company. Last, he spent his final days running a prison work farm. He was originally buried in Elmwood Cemetery, but then he got moved to the Health Sciences Park. I would place a miniature Confederate flag with flowers there to recognize that he served for the Confederacy. Daniel Webster deserves to be tied to a fence and whipped. When he should have been helping, he was being lazy. He was born on January 18, 1782, in Salisbury, New Hampshire. He grew up on a farm with 9 siblings. He studied schooling and became a headmaster at the Freeburg Academy in Maine. When he left, he went to Boston and got a job as an attorney. His grave is in Old Winslow Burial Ground. The U.S. military strikes on Syria. For the first time since the Civil War began, we launched a missile at Syria. This caused death over there and many issues. The Civil War caused many deaths like this.